And because this was last minute, I just used the slides that I used. For Cancer Grace, it's a not-for-profit organization in the US, and there are fellows there on leadership. And I give this talk every year to them, but not only about social media. So this will be a talk more about building your career, about the journey. And I'll also touch on social media towards the end. My disclaimer is that whatever I share today, it's not my advice. These are only my opinions. And because these are my personal opinions, these are heavily biased by my own experiences. And my experiences may not necessarily match with your experiences or your expectations. So whatever I tell here today, there is a big caveat about it. As you may know, I did my, they call it MD outside, we call it MBBS here, from Institute of Medicine, Tribhuvan University in 2012. Then I went to Japan. I did my postgraduate training in medical oncology from Japan, 2012 to 2017. And I also received a PhD at the end. And I did my fellowship at Harvard from 2018 to 2019. In 2019, I moved to Queen's University, Canada, in a hybrid position of a fellow/faculty. And from 2021 June, I have been working there as an associate professor of oncology and public health sciences. Now, besides that, I am involved with several organizations, eCancer, part-time working for other organizations like Harvard, ASCO, ESMO, WHO, and so on. The reason I'm telling you all of this, and by the way, recently we have established a new movement called Common Sense Oncology. I encourage you all to Google it and to read about it. This is something that I'm very passionate about, and I think Dr. Chris Booth might talk about it in his lecture tomorrow. But anyways, the reason I'm telling you all of this is not to tell you that, oh, I'm doing this and that, but to tell you that I was one of you doing MBBS here, trying to learn about all these research skills, did not get much opportunity, went abroad and saw that the world was much wider and bigger than what I had initially thought while being here, and tried to explore the opportunities available. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is it is possible for all of us. It is possible. I don't think I have done anything extraordinary. That means if you follow your passion and if you get right opportunities at the right time, all of you have the potential to grow larger and to build your career much bigger than what you are thinking. So don't think low, don't aim low, aim high. It is possible. But having said that, what I have learned is, all journeys are unique. These journeys cannot be replicated. I'll tell you my journey, but it is not necessary that if you follow every step that I have done, you'll arrive at exactly the same point. Because I have had so many role models and inspirational icons, and I try to follow their path, and that does not necessarily lead to where I think it will lead to. So we need to understand that it's more about inspiration rather than copying the exact same process. I never planned to, when I was a medical student, I never thought that I would become a medical oncologist. I realized that I wanted to do medical oncology during my internship. And when I was in Japan, my sole focus was, okay, I'll learn clinical skills, I'll go back to Nepal, I'll work as a medical oncologist. I started to do research while in Japan, and then I realized that it is something very fascinating to me. I had never done any research before, so I did not know whether it was fascinating or not. And I came to Nepal, and going to Harvard was never a part of the plan. I was just working with them on a couple of projects. And suddenly I came back to Nepal. I started working at civil hospital. So my contribution to the research projects got slowed. They asked me, you are not as productive as before, what happened? And I said, oh, I'm back in Nepal now. I'm seeing patients, I'm busy. And they said like, oh, then we want you to come to Harvard. Let's work together. We have a fellowship for you here. And when I went to Harvard, I never thought that I would move to Queens. Then I met Dr. Chris Booth, and he is my mentor, my role model, my inspiration. And I wanted to work with him in the same place. I moved to Queens. So none of this was a part of the plan. It's just opening one door after another. without actually knowing what's going to happen next, but believing in yourself and thinking that it will all turn out to be well. And even if it does not, you at least tried. So the other thing I want to tell you today is people will only see the success, but everybody has experienced failures. It's the fact that those failures remain hidden. And especially in this age of social media, you don't see people posting on Facebook or Twitter that, oh, I'm sad today, I failed, or all those bad things that happen to people. They only put the selective sample of the extremely good things that have happened to them. And you look at that biased selective sample and you think everybody is having the time of their life except for you, which is a very biased interpretation. I have faced several failures in my life. I don't think most of you know that. Most of you think that, oh, he was first in SLC and +2 and whatever. I have faced several failures in my life. It was not easy. But you don't see that part. It's hidden. You don't see how much hard work someone has put in. It's hidden. But everybody will necessarily have undergone that. You can ask Dr. Bishes the amount of struggle that he has done to establish bone marrow transplant in this country. You don't see that. What you see is, oh, he's the only transplanter in the country. So, but the thing is, these failures are failures only if you accept them as final. If you don't accept them as final, these failures become only temporary setbacks. And those temporary setbacks are okay. If you are driving and want to go to Butwal from Kathmandu and you see, I don't know, a truck on the road, then you hit brakes. That's not the end of the journey. It's a temporary slow in your pace, after which you'll pick up and you'll arrive Butwal ultimately, as long as you don't give up. And some of the failures, they actually turn out to be blessings in disguise. The beauty about this is you don't know this prospectively. You'll know this only retrospectively. You'll know that some of those failures were blessings in disguise, some of those setbacks were blessings in disguise, only after a certain time point in the future when you look back upon it. I'll give you one example of my blogs. And credit to eCancer, like when I started this in 2016, I did not have a name for myself. I was, like people did not know me in the field of oncology. And these blogs have helped a lot. This blog, in a sense, made me famous. And that's why I love eCancer so much, because we have been together. Like eCancer was also in their very early days at this time. I was in my very early days. So in a sense, we grew up together. They supported me, I supported them. So I feel very passionate about my blogs. But I'll tell you the story of how these blogs started. I'm a big fan of Richard Lehman. I don't know whether you know him or not. He used to write these weekly journal reviews from major journals in BMJ. In BMJ, he had this special section called Richard Lehman's Weekly Journal Reviews. And I used to read this every week. I loved his style. It has a humanistic touch, it is personal, but it is also objective, and his blog will tell you whatever you need to know from that week from major medical journals. And as I told you, you should be inspired by other people, but you don't necessarily need to follow the exact same path. I was super inspired by him, and I thought that maybe we have an opportunity for such type of summaries in oncology as well. So many new trials are coming up every week. So I thought, okay, I will summarize the major news in the field of oncology over the last month, and I'll publish a monthly blog. There were so many things that touched me and I wanted to write about, and they were not necessarily all scientific articles, so I wanted to start a blog of my own, being inspired by Richard Lehman. And then I started writing it, but I needed a venue. Of course, BMJ is not going to publish a random guy called Bishal Gyawali, a postgraduate trainee in Nagoya University, Japan. Like, who is that guy? Like, why would they care? So, of course, they are not going to publish it. But I tried. I sent it to several venues. I got rejections from most of the venues. And just to show you a couple of examples, like I reached out to some of the people that I knew, and they were like, okay, you have an interesting point, but it does not, like we don't want to publish something that is personal. We want more oncology specific topics without any personal touch and so on. And then Audrey Naylor, I don't know whether Maria remembers her. She was, now she has left eCancer, but She was at eCancer. She was one of the editors at eCancer. And I stumbled upon eCancer. I did not know eCancer at the time. I stumbled upon eCancer, and I was trying my luck everywhere. And so I sent an email to Audrey at eCancer, and I asked her if they would be interested in hosting my blogs. And this was the response she sent. I have circulated the sample you sent me and around our team, including our editor-in-chief. Everyone agreed that you have a fresh and appealing writing style. So basically, they agreed to publish it. I was so happy. Like, someone found what I was writing is worthy of being published every month. And, getting all those rejections from other journals, other platforms, was a big blessing in disguise for me, because I don't think I would have the same career today if I did not have these blogs at eCancer. And bonus, they decided to pay me for my blogs. It was a very small amount, but they started to pay me. And I had never even imagined that you could get paid for writing blogs. That was something that I did not even know. And now, not only my blogs were being published, but I was also getting paid whatever amount it is. Even if it's small, it's like they are recognizing my effort. And that made a big difference. I felt so confident. I felt so happy. And now look at the dates. After 2 years, Audrey again writes to me, like, in 2 years now, I have become famous writing those blogs. I publish it every month. And in 2018, she tells me that, oh, this is a 2-year anniversary. It has been really lovely getting to know you and seeing your blogs grow because she knows how it started and where it went, from your first idea to becoming a real influence. So, it's important to treasure important people, important institutions that have helped you. And it is important to realize that, not anything can be compensated in terms of monetary value. There is a huge role of humanistic emotions as well. Because I started this journey from eCancer, I have seldom said no to any request from eCancer. Like, they tell me, let's do this. I say, okay. Let's do that. I say, okay. Like, it does not matter how much I get paid. It does not matter how much time it takes. But eCancer feels like a family. It is a family. We grew up together. But as you can see, how it is a blessing in disguise. If I had received acceptance from the previous platforms, this would have never happened. And that means probably this eCancer Kathmandu Congress would not have happened. I would not have that relationship with the eCancer team to do it today. My blogs, they don't exist anymore. I mean, I don't write these blogs anymore because I became super busy. So I don't have these monthly blogs anymore. But we have this Congress doing with eCancer. I'm in the editorial board of eCancer Medical Science Journal. We do the roundup videos after every ASCO and ESMO. One other example. Again, the reason I'm telling you all of this is so that you can find some lessons or some inspirations from something that I say, not necessarily that you should be following my path. This is one of a very important and personally very close piece to me. And when I wrote this is basically about, I saw at ASCO meeting that nivolumab plus ipilimumab data in metastatic melanoma was being presented. And it was the first time that combination was being presented at ASCO. It was a huge news. It was blockbuster. And the discussant of that trial, Dr. Len Salz, he's from Sloan Kettering in New York. He was talking about how expensive this therapy is and how US healthcare system cannot afford it. So he was talking about how American healthcare system will not be able to afford this treatment. And after seeing that, I realized, like, what's going to happen to Nepal? If American healthcare system is not going to afford these treatments, what about my cancer patients back home? And so it was a very deeply personal piece, and I started writing it. And I did not know what to do with that piece. Like, I write things because I wanted to write it. I could not write it. So I wrote it. But after writing it, I did not know what to do with it. What should I do with that? Where should I? That did not look like a fully journal article publication, did not look like a blog. So I was just sitting on it and, opportunities. So after a couple of months, American Society of Clinical Oncology announced that they were starting a new journal called Journal of Global Oncology. And they were looking for articles. And then I thought, okay, this is the right opportunity. They are having a journal dedicated for global oncology, and I should submit it. And I submitted it, and you know what happened? This is how, like, you do your part, and then somehow the universe will hear you. Because what happened was, Journal of Global Oncology, they read my article, they thought it was really nice, but it was not polished. I was naive. And they said, we have this mentorship matching program. We'll match you with a mentor who will help you to polish your writing. I'm like, eureka, eureka, I want that. And you know who they matched me with? Len Salz, the same person who was doing the discussion of the trial. The big shot in GI oncology, Len Salz, is a very big name. So they matched me with Len Salz. And then Len replied to me saying he has read through my manuscript and he made several edits and comments. And then it finally got published. And this is like what great mentors are like, because he made so much edits in my manuscript. I said, you should be the senior author on the paper. And then he said, no, it is your voice. It makes more sense to have it as a single author from you in terms of the subjective, in terms of the first person pronoun I. It does not make more sense to say it we and me getting mixed into it. So he did not even accept authorship. I just acknowledged him on the paper. And this is the world where everyone wants to be an author in every single piece. So what have I learned? As I said, people see only the success, failures remain hidden. And you should be doing things for passion, for the satisfaction of knowing things and learning by putting in efforts. I can't stress this enough. Like, even outside during tea breaks and lunch breaks, some of you are asking me how to get this published or how to do this particular thing. But the first thing is, you should start doing something because it excites you, because you are passionate about it, not because it leads to a journal publication. As I said, I wrote that Me Too piece without even knowing where it would go. I did not know what would happen to it. I just wrote it because I could not write it. So what excites you? What are you passionate about? Focus on that thing. Do things for the satisfaction of knowing things, and don't opt for shortcuts to success. Especially in this era of TikTok, you might think that success is very easy and there are several shortcuts to it. There is none. You just don't see the failure part. There is no other way. You have to put in hard work. You have to put in effort. You have to show it. There is no other way. Never opt for a shortcut to success. As I mentioned, there might be some shortcuts that will give you name, that will give you fame, that will give you money. But in the long run, they don't count. And in the long run, if you have become successful by putting in hard work, you will get all of those things. You will get name, fame, and money. You don't need to chase behind them. You don't need to run behind them. They will run behind you. An example. This was the Lancet Commission on cancer control in China, India, and Russia. This was published in 2014. I was in Japan, second year trainee at the time in oncology. I was super impressed with Sangam and all the applicants for that award. And by the way, apply for it next year as well. We'll have this award every year, as long as the e-cancer team is coming here. But I was super impressed because most of the applicants are MBBS students, interns, and they have 10, 15, 20. He had 70 publications. When I was an intern, I had 0 publications. Until 2014, I had 0 publications. I graduated from medical school without knowing how to read a paper, much less how to write a paper. I did not know how to read a paper well. I never even thought that I would write paper someday. So in 2014, I was in Nagoya. I was a second year trainee, and they had something called Journal Club, which was pretty weird to me. Because I never had any experience. That after moving to Japan, I first came across the concept of evidence-based medicine practice over here I was trained in textbook-based medicine and eminence-based medicine. And I learned that, okay, I'm supposed to read papers and I'm supposed to treat people based on the data from these papers. So the answer to why we use nivolumab in metastatic melanoma is not because my professor said so or because the textbook said so, but it is because of this particular trial which showed this difference between getting nivolumab and not getting. So I was fascinated with this. And in journal clubs, we were supposed to be presenting about these new articles, new papers every time. And it was my turn the next week, and I was supposed to make a presentation on a journal article. And obviously, I was new to oncology. I did not know much, so I wanted to look for a shortcut, or not shortcut. I wanted to look for an easy paper that I can present. And I came across, and it has to be from a top journal. So I came across this Lancet Commission, and of course, unlike clinical trials, I did not have to. I did not know how to read a clinical trial well. So this sounded like, I could make some slides about these political issues and get away with it. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this paper. And then I started reading the paper. And the more I read this commission, the more I got interested in it. I was supremely interested because this commission goes into huge detail about the infrastructure for cancer care, delivery, and research in India, Russia, and China. And it was so fascinating. And I tried to think about Nepal at the time, because India and China, these are our two neighbors. Nepal is sandwiched between India and China. And so many developments, so many interesting things are happening in India and China. But what about Nepal? What's happening in Nepal? Like, does the world even know that we exist? Because most of the things that are being discussed for India and China, they're applicable to Nepal as well. So I presented this at my journal club, but that thing started to bug me, and I wanted to write about it. So I wrote about it, and then one of my seniors told me that, why don't you submit it as a letter to editor? And then that's what I did. And eureka, it got published. It was accepted. So the first thing I ever wrote, it was correspondence, that's a different story, but the first thing I ever wrote got published in the Lancet Oncology. That is a huge boost to confidence. I felt so good. I feel like, wow, I can publish in the Lancet Oncology. Who cares whether it is correspondence or original article? I can publish in Lancet. My name is there. I felt very happy. But this was something that came out of my passion in the topic. I did not say, I want to get published in the Lancet Oncology, so I'll start writing this letter. It did not start that way. I wanted to write it. I wanted to express my feelings. And then I thought, okay, might as well submit it. This is the first long paper, not correspondence paper, that I have ever written. This was published in 2015, 1 year after. And how this started? By seeing a patient. We had a patient, we had to use opioids in him because of his cancer-induced pain. And he suffered from constipation that was refractory to all the laxatives that we had. Severe constipation. And one day, the patient told me that I would rather have pain than have this constipation. And I was, I was moved by that. I was like, what are we doing? We are trying to treat his pain. He's having so much constipation that he says he would rather have pain than have constipation. This is not right. And I started reading all the literature about how to manage constipation. Like, constipation started to become my favorite thing in the world. So I started to read about constipation. And I started to, in Nepal, you understand that making notes, like you make notes while reading, right? So I started to make notes. So I started to summarize all the studies that were out there. And then I made a presentation on opioid-induced constipation to my colleagues there. And someone said, like, wow, this is fascinating. Like, I did not know much about this. And if I did not know much about this, probably there are many people out there who do not know much about this. And I think what you have presented is worthy of being published because many people can learn from it. And then I said, okay. And then I wrote about it. And because my first paper was accepted in Lancet, I thought, wow, I'll try for Lancet Oncology again, and got rejected within a few hours. And I submitted to several journals. They all rejected it. But and then someone suggested that I submit it to this Scandinavian Journal of Gastroenterology. I did not even know that such a journal existed, but I submitted there. It had decent 3-4-ish impact factor. And it got accepted outright. Like, they sent it for peer review, But both the peer reviewers said, this is a fantastic study, it should just be published as it is. So what that means is, even if it's the best paper, if it is a mismatch, it won't be published. You need to find the right home for the right type of article. Sachin Tendulkar would be probably a poor physics teacher. He is supposed to be in the cricket field. So similarly, this paper was, in retrospect, I should not have bothered submitting it to other top journals and taken up David's time. I should have submitted it to a gastroenterology focused journal from the beginning. And then, in my 1 year anniversary of my e-cancer blogs, at the time I was reading several nonsense articles in oncology, and this is what I had written at the time. I would like to start a center for sense in oncology one day that exposes the nonsense in oncology, blah, 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 and focus on projects such as cancer ground cert. And that's something that I had just written in one of my blogs. I had started to write blogs, and I had written this in one of my blogs. And this concept of cancer ground cert, it started to take legs. People started to notice this. People started to talk about it on social media. And this cancer ground cert suddenly started to become a thing in oncology. And from there, it ended up being a Lancet Oncology article. How did that happen? People started to talk about cancer ground cert in social media, on Twitter, and people started to refer to cancer ground cert, to refer to these common sense interventions. And Susie invited me to 2017 Royal Society of Medicine meeting on global oncology, and she invited me to talk about cancer ground cert because she came across that idea from my blogs and from social media. And I went there, and that's the first time I saw David. And Richard Sullivan was also supposed to be here, but he's not here today. But I met him as well. David was the chair of our session, and I presented on cancer ground cert. And I met Richard Sullivan as well. And then Richard, via email, introduced me to Chris Booth, who was in Queen's University, Canada at that time. Chris was not at that meeting, but Chris heard about this cancer ground cert talk. He called me, and he told me that he heard about how my talk went, and he was super impressed. And he encouraged me to write about it. At the time I was in Nepal, I was working in civil service hospital. I did not have much time about it. And I had frankly, if not for Chris, I would not have written about it. I gave a talk. I don't have time to write these things. In Nepal, it matters more if you see 50 more patients, then you write one more paper. So I did not have much motivation, but Chris kept pushing me. And he used to call me every week and said, how much you have written? How much you have written? And then I just wrote it just to avoid Chris's phone calls. He's going to call me again. So I wrote it and I sent it to him. And yeah, he was super impressed. And Chris, Richard Sullivan, and we ended up writing this paper in the Lancet Oncology. And now, I think cancer ground cert is a thing. Many people in the field of oncology, especially global oncology, they don't need an introduction to cancer ground cert. But how did it start? From some, when you're writing something, sometimes these ideas come to your mind. So if I was not writing e-cancer blogs, probably I would not have written about cancer ground cert and would not have talked about it and would not have led to this publication. So never opt for a shortcut to success. Just put in your hard work. And that brings me to the topic of mentorship. You'll have a separate lecture on mentorship tomorrow, but I just want to touch on this. Mentors are super important for your success, but I understand that this is not entirely in your hands, especially with regards to clinical mentorship, because you're posted at a hospital and whoever is supervisor there is your mentor, and you have no say in that. But in today's era of social media and internet and everything, you don't need to limit yourself to your local mentor. You can have mentors all over the world. You need to take initiative. No one else is going to do that for you. So what do you want to look for in mentors, and what type of mentors should you avoid? So, a good mentor will have your priorities as his or her priorities. Will try to think of your best interest instead of his or her best interest. And the definition of a good mentor for me is if the mentor gets happiness in seeing the mentee climb the ladders of success and be independent, that's the definition of a good mentorship. Sometimes you will have mentors who, okay, let's take an analogy. If you really love a bird, then you don't put that bird in a cage. You let the bird fly. So a good mentor will give you wings to fly. A good mentor will support you throughout your journey. And on the flip side, if you have come across a good mentor, value it, treasure it. They don't come often. Good mentors are really rare. So if you have found a good mentor, then you have to treasure that relationship. And a good mentor will turn out to be your best friend in the long run. And I have been, Chris is not here today. I wanted to dedicate this to Chris. He has been an amazing mentor to me. And so, yeah, continuing with the lessons, some decisions are really complicated. It's not always easy, but you have to make one and just move on. For example, my decision to move from Harvard to Queens, it was one of the most difficult decisions that I made. There were so many equations to that. My parents had not even heard about Queens. They like when I told them I'm going to Harvard, they said, okay, of course, it's a fantastic world-class institution. If you are going to Harvard, that's okay. Otherwise, stay with us. I said, no, I'm going to Harvard. They said, okay, if you're going to Harvard, fine. But then I said, now I'm going to Queens. And they're like, what is Queens? Come here, back, Kathmandu. So moving from Harvard to Queens was not an easy decision. And I had to take several variables into account. But after you have reached a decision, you just make the decision and move on. There is no point in thinking over and over and over and not reaching any decision at all. A bad decision is better than no decision. And inspiration, I'm highlighting this again and again, inspiration. Inspiration is all around. So are opportunities. Knowledge is also free. So there is literally no excuse today to not aim high. It's not easy. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. I'm not saying that it will be available to everyone without putting in any effort. But if you are really sincere about it, there is literally no excuse, as that quotation says. If you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. So you strive for your aim, as I mentioned, other things, name, fame, money, they will come by themselves. Don't aim for those. And at the end, you strive to be a good human being. That is what matters. If you are a good human being, then no matter what you do, you are good at it. If you are a good human being, you are a good doctor, you are a good researcher. I don't know, if you are a bad human being, then even if you might be good at your skills, overall, you are not going to make much of a positive difference in the world. And when you think that you have arrived at whatever your goal is, you should help people who are down. When you have arrived at a height, you should lend your hand down and help other people who are trying to cross that path. I'll give an example. Jack West. He's a world-class, famous lung oncologist from Seattle. At the time, he was in Seattle. And I had never met him before. He only knew me through Twitter, through social media, and through my blogs. And in 2016, there are dates as well, he sends me a message on Twitter saying, why are you in Japan and what are your career plans? He had no reason to have any interest in me. He is not even in academia. He was not even trying to hire me or make me a fellow or whatever. Just out of pure, genuine care and interest, he asked, what led you to Japan, what are your career plans? At the time, it was a big deal to just get a message from these big people. And I'm like, oh, wow, Jack West is texting me for no reason. And then he says, some months later, keep doing what you're doing. Very impressed by your thoughtful commentary, both short and long form. That is a big confidence building text to get from someone who you respect. And again, he has no selfish intentions for this. There is no reason why he should be telling this, except for my own benefit. And then we ended up being friends. I never met him. We continued these discussions on social media. And I came to Nepal and I was seeing patients. And when I came across difficult lung cancer cases, I even started to ask him for his clinical advice. So he started helping me with clinical advice as well. So this is just an example of how he was giving me some advice on how to treat individual patients when I was in need. And then in 2019, we ended up writing this editorial together for JAMA Oncology. He was in the editorial board of JAMA Oncology. He knew my work. And then he asked me to write this editorial. I wrote it with him. And we have written several papers since then. It all started with a simple, him caring for me. Oh, what are your plans? What are you going to do? And at ESMO 2017, I think I met him for the first time in person. And that's the beauty of conferences. I love in-person conferences. I hate virtual conferences. That gives you opportunity to meet with your role models, with your friends, your colleagues, and build networks and put a personal touch to the relationship. Let's talk about research or publications. Again, not everyone should be doing clinical research. You don't have to. It should depend on your passion. You can just be a pure clinician. We need pure clinicians. We need people who take care of 200 patients a day. We have that need. So you want to be a pure clinician? That's perfectly fine. It's better not to be a researcher than to be a bad researcher. Or someone who does research just for the sake of getting published or just for the sake of getting some name and fame. It's okay not to do research. But you have to understand research though. Without understanding research, you cannot be a good clinician. But not everyone has to do clinical research. So you should do research that expresses your passion, that would not let you sleep peacefully otherwise. That question bugs you unless you find the answer. And about research and publications, learning how to write is a skill, but learning how to read is a far more important skill. So read a lot. In order to be a good writer, you have to be a voracious reader. You have to read a lot. And this is a tip that I can share. Different people have different writing styles. So in your field, find someone whose writing style you absolutely admire and read everything that person has written. And especially this long form of clinical research articles, they have a structure. You have to write introduction and methods and so on. So there is less flexibility there. But I absolutely love reading commentaries or reviews or perspectives or editorials because there the person can put his or her flavor, their style. So I'm a big fan of single author articles or at least 2 author articles because you know that person absolutely wrote every word of it. In an article that has 50 authors, you don't know who wrote what. So, I can give you some examples like, Ian Tannock. I like his writing style. So I think I have read almost everything that he has written, at least after I was born. He has written several things that before I was born. But after I have been in oncology, I think I have written everything that he has ever published. There is someone called Gil Welch. He used to publish a lot in New England Journal, all these top journals. And most of his articles are 2, 3, 1 author articles. I have read almost everything that I could. I love his writing style. And Elizabeth Eisenhower, I love her writing style. I have been very impressed and inspired from her writing style. So find a couple of people in your field that you absolutely love and read everything they have written, especially 1 or 2 author articles, because you know that every word in that article was written by them and nobody else. And reach out to people. Don't hesitate. If you admire someone, the biggest tragedy that I find in the world, not only in oncology, is not that bad people are not getting punished, but that good people are not getting enough praise and are not being commended enough. In law, they say it's better to have 1 criminal escape than to convict 1 innocent people. So I think that the tragedy is we don't appreciate people, but we are very quick in criticizing people. So if you appreciate someone, if you are inspired by someone, reach out to them and they might help you, or they may not help you or whatever, but at least let them know that they are doing a good job. But if you reach out to people, usually I have found that people are very good at at lending a hand down, at helping others. Of course, it also depends on so many other variables and how busy they are, but reach out. At least there is nothing to lose. And as I said, research is a passion, it's not a necessity. Now, I want to answer this question. Many of you have asked this question. Do number of papers or number of citations matter? Does it matter that you have one paper or 5 papers or 10 or 100? Does it matter how many citations you have? And some people will tell you it does not matter. It's the quality of the work you have. It does not matter how many papers you have written. Even if you have written one paper, if it is a good one, that will make a big impact. I partly agree, but at your stage of career, it matters. If you reach the stage where it stops mattering, then it does not matter. But at early on in your career, it's always better to have 10 papers than to have 2 papers. It's always better to have more citations than to have less citations. After a certain point in your career, these metrics will stop mattering. And then it does not matter. And that's why people will say that it does not matter. Yes. Like, top people, if they publish something on a random newspaper, everybody will read about it. But for us to be heard well, we have to publish it in a good journal. For a person who is at the pinnacle of his or her career, even if their paper stops getting cited, it does not matter. So reach the stage where it stops mattering, and then it will stop mattering. Let's talk about social media. It's a great tool for uplifting your career. I gave you some examples. It's a great tool to foster discussion. But how to approach social media? First, you should be proactive in social media, but don't be rude. It's a very fine line. Be unafraid. If you have a legitimate point to make, there is no reason why you should be afraid. But you should be hitting ideas, not people. You should not be criticizing people, or you should not be saying bad things about people. You can attack the idea, not the person with the idea. You can say that this is not a good idea, this is a bad idea, but you cannot say that you are a bad person because of this. And there are so many stuff in social media that will boil your blood, but they are not worth your emotional energy. Just learn to ignore them. Like, I have avoided any conversation related to COVID-19 on social media. I have opinions. If you ask me in private, I have opinions about COVID-19, but I have not uttered a single word about COVID-19 on social media because I saw that it stopped becoming science and it started to become a religion. And I do not want to participate in that. And read before you comment. Sometimes we are very quick in responding. It pays to read at least once before you actually hit that post button. And substance matters. A lot of, especially made Twitter, oncology Twitter, is full of flattery and cheerleading. Someone publishes a trial, and within 20 seconds, other person says, this is a great news for our patients. I'm like, you did not even have the time to read the title, much less abstract or the full paper. How do you know this is a great news for our patients? There is so much of flattery and cheerleading, and it's like a syndicate. I will praise you, you will praise me, we both will be happy together. The benefits from such cheerleading are probably not worth the risks of losing self-esteem. But again, it's a personal judgment call. If you want to do that, who am I to judge? But don't equate your worth or your self-esteem with Twitter validation. This virtual world of social media is a very poor surrogate for reality. So there is no reason to feel good or to feel bad about yourself based on how many followers you have, how many likes you get, how many retweets you get. I see that even these top people celebrating, oh, I reached 5K followers today. You reckon, like, who cares? And social media. This is a joke. Of course, Galileo died several years ago before Twitter came into existence. But it shows that, this is the impact of social media. If Galileo was here today and he said the earth revolves around the sun, it would come with a disclaimer saying that this claim is disputed by theology experts. So social media, is it a means or an end? Many people confuse this. Many people think it's an end in itself. It's the goal in itself. That's not true. It's just a means to your goal. Social media in itself cannot and should not be your end. No value in being famous for the sake of being famous. And psychophancy is very easy in social media, but the audience can see through, or maybe not. That's my biggest disappointment with oncology Twitter. People are praising for no reason, and actually everybody is becoming happy. And the beauty of social media is real-time commentary. This is what I like social media for. This is what I like Twitter for. There is a real-time commentary from people you respect, not the people that the journals necessarily solicit editorials from, because the editorials may be biased, but you know who to respect, or you know who to follow, or you know whose opinions count, and then you can see their opinion in real time, what they are talking about a trial, what they are talking about the new drug. And the other beauty is you can directly tag these people if they are on social media. You can tag them and ask your questions directly. You don't necessarily need to go through the route of going through the letter to editor and waiting 2 months for the reply. So the thing is, you need to bring a unique voice to the table. What will make you unique? Why should someone listen to you? Share your experience. Your personal experience always matters. Don't lose your human touch. Don't just copy others, or worse, congratulate others for the sake of congratulating others, or worse, wash your dirty linens in public. That means if you have a personal feud with someone, if you're personally unhappy with someone, don't spill it over on social media. The world does not need to know about it. And if you wrestle with a pig, both of you will get dirty, but the pig will enjoy it. This was a slide that was sent to me by an audience in the International Lung Cancer meeting. Jack West, that I mentioned before, he had presented in the lung cancer meeting about me, and someone took a photo and sent it to me. And I felt very touched. Jack was promoting me, without my knowledge. He did not tell me that, oh, I'm going to put you on a slide and you should be thankful. He did not say that, oh, I'm going to promote you. He promoted about me without telling me about it. And he gave an example of how an oncologist in training in Nepal has had this impact. So I want to pay it forward. And today I want to promote one global oncologist from low and middle income country who I think is doing a pretty good job at social media. And he is Amol Akhade from Mumbai, India. I knew him from social media, and I met him in person for the first time last year at the e-cancer meeting. And he tweets very sharp. His tweets are very witty, and he puts lots of thought. And he took initiative. He reached out to me, and then we started sharing some ideas, and he shared about some of the issues in India. And last year at e-cancer meeting, I met him for the first time in person. And then we ended up with this paper. He told me about how atezolizumab, when it was revoked by the FDA, it was still being encouraged in India. And then I was mad and sad about it, and I thought that was not the right thing to happen in the world. And Amol and I started sharing ideas. Then we discussed with Bhavna, who is here today, and we wrote this article, and we published it in the Lancet Oncology. And huge credit to the Lancet Oncology for recognizing the importance of this work, because after we published this, within a couple of months, the DISCO, or the Indian FDA, decided to withdraw this drug from using it in India. So we had a big, meaningful policy impact. If you are a basic science researcher, you become happy when you see that your molecule has turned into a drug and your drug is saving lives. But for us policy researchers, global oncology researchers, this is our eureka moment. Our paper led to approval or withdrawal or change in levels of a drug. And we wrote another paper, again in e-cancer, about the role of CDK4/6 inhibitors in early breast cancer. So this is how relationships, networking start. And of course, Amol has put in lots of effort on this. Sometimes you come to me and say, Dai, I want to do a research with you, and you have no research idea. You don't know what you want to do. You don't want to write anything. Basically, you are saying, in your next paper, can you just put my name in it? which is not the right thing. Amol, I did not just put his name here. He put in effort. He wrote the first draft. He went through the DISCO website, read the regulatory filings, and so on. You have to put in effort. Okay. So let's talk about social media debates. We have lots of debates on social medias, discussions and fights on social medias nowadays. So a couple of words about that. I engage in social media debates sometimes, but my goal is not to convince the person with whom I'm debating. I know that that person has made up his or her mind. I'm not going to change that person's mind. But I engage in debate because I want the audience to see, and the audience can see the opposite side of the equation, and then they can form their own hypothesis. So it's like a real life debate. In a real life debate, you can listen to two different opposing views, and then you can judge for yourself who is right. But if I don't engage in debate, then the audience might think that that particular viewpoint is the only viewpoint. Some of the etiquettes. In social media, I don't respond to bots, of course. I don't respond to people with no profile pic. And I don't respond to people who are making ad hominem or personal attacks. And I don't respond to people who has not even bothered to read the paper. And that I know because that person is asking a question that has already been answered. That person is asking a claim that I have not made, is claiming that I have made an argument that I have not made. And it's blatantly obvious based on time. If I put a paper at 3 p.m. and that person is saying at 3:01 p.m. that, oh, in your paper you have done this, then I know that that person has not read the paper. But always be respectful. If I think that I cannot be respectful, I'm so angry, then I just don't respond, I ignore. And something about unsolicited feedback in social media, this is a big deal. And I have heard that especially female colleagues, they get unsolicited messages from several people which are inappropriate. One example on my end is when I published this paper about reporting harms more transparently in trials of cancer drugs, I was criticizing the use of language like well tolerated, acceptable, etc. in publications. I published it in BMJ in 2018. And then in 2019, in New England Journal of Medicine, someone else published another article with the exact same theme, and they did not even cite us. They published the same theme without even citing us. And then I put a tweet out saying, we have raised this issue earlier in BMJ, and I was not disrespectful. I said, nice to see New England Journal also recognizing this issue. And because these articles are published in New England Journal, I said, you should start doing something about it. You stop publishing these articles. And then one very senior person from New York sends me an unsolicited DM saying, hi, none of my business, but your tweets are bad. You should not be tweeting this. And I'm like, he's such a senior person. And, that person can make or break your career. And that person is sending you a message for no reason and saying that it is unsolicited feedback. So how do you respond to this if you get such unsolicited feedback? I responded saying, thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it. What exact words in my tweet did you find condescending so that I can learn from this? And that person has never responded since then. Okay, other tips. Be inspired by people, but don't be jealous of them. But don't trust anyone simply because they're experts as well. Use your own common sense. Simply because someone is an expert, you don't necessarily need to believe everything that they say. You don't necessarily need to believe what I am saying right now. Use your own common sense. Social media is an important tool for public and patient education. So that is another important topic. We have to use social media effectively to clarify several public misunderstandings. I know that public and patient misunderstanding happens everywhere in the world. Wow, I went way beyond time. That's why I put my talk at the end. I didn't know how long I was going to take. So what truly matters at the end? Have fun, make friends. At the end, nothing else matters. There are challenges, but let's not forget our privileges as well. Miles to go before we sleep, but let's not forget the miles that we have already taken. Don't also forget everyone who have helped you on your journey, and spend time with family and friends. What's the point of living anyway? Ask your patients, ask your retired faculty, ask your grandparents what they regret, what they wish they had done more when they were younger. You spend time with your family and friends. That's what matters at the end. And all those memories that you have created, climbing Mount Annapurna Base Camp during my 4th year of MBBS. It is one of the most fascinating memories that I have. While in Japan, we climbed Mount Fuji. In Kingston, we don't have mountains. We have rocks. The lake was frozen. We did ice fishing. And Chris is here. As I was telling you, good mentors become your friends. So that's what matters at the end. And I want to dedicate this to my family. This is my bigger family from Japan. You see my immediate family. My daughter was born in Japan. That's my bigger family in Japan. And this is from this year. This is my family. I dedicate this to my parents, obviously, but my wife, my daughter, my son, who have all been such a big support, and without them, I would not be here. So thank you.